There are moments you don't plan for because they don't even seem possible inside your world. Moments that stretch reality so violently that even breathing feels like it doesn't belong to you anymore. That was the feeling clawing its way through my chest the night everything cracked open. We were at Lauren and Mike's anniversary dinner, one of those polished, over-decorated events where everyone pretends to care about centerpieces and champagne toasts. Nora, my wife, wore an emerald green dress, sharp and elegant, a choice that turned heads the moment we walked in. She didn't choose that color for me. I realized that much later. The first blow didn't come as a slap across the face. It came quiet, almost gentle, a stolen glance I wasn't meant to see. Nora sitting too close to a guy I didn't recognize, touching his wrist lightly under the table, the kind of touch you reserve for people you dream about when you think no one's watching. He laughed, dropped his napkin, and when he reached down to pick it up, she leaned in and whispered something that made him grin like a fool. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I was frozen mid-conversation with some neighbor about traffic patterns in our suburb, nodding like an idiot while my life began setting itself on fire 6 feet away from me. I watched them. I didn't blink. I forced myself to study the tiny details, how her left hand brushed a lock of hair behind her ear, the nervous way she bit the corner of her lip, the slight arch of her back when she laughed, signals she once used only for me. Now they belonged to someone else. And she didn't care if I saw. Dinner was a farce. Every clink of a fork against a plate sounded like a countdown to something I didn't yet understand. Nora smiled across the table at me, this perfect, practiced smile that no longer reached her eyes. My stomach twisted. I knew I wasn't imagining it. Something had already happened between them. The only question was how far it had gone and how deep her betrayal had dug itself into her. I waited until dessert. I needed the whole room to be distracted, needed the lights dimmed low enough that nobody would notice me disappear for a few minutes. I excused myself, slipped outside under the guise of taking a call, and looped around to the back patio where I could see through the sheer curtains into the dining room. I wanted to catch them without the stage lights of conversation and polite society. I wanted the raw version. I got it. Through the glass, I saw Nora lean toward him again. He touched her knee under the table. She didn't push his hand away. She looked down, pretending to adjust her dress, but she let his fingers trail slowly across her leg before she gently brushed them off, giggling like a guilty teenager. The man, whoever he was, winked. She winked back. A slow, private signal. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the entire thing was so nakedly shameless I felt like an idiot for ever believing anything about us was real. I didn't go back inside immediately. I stayed out there in the cold night air, listening to my heartbeat thud against my ribs like a war drum. 5 minutes later, she slipped outside too, pretending to look for me. "There you are," she said lightly, like we were still partners, like she hadn't just invited another man's hand onto her skin in front of our friends. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. I could smell the cheap champagne on her breath. "You all right?" she asked, tucking her arm through mine like she owned me, like I should be grateful for her touch. That's when I saw it, the faint smudge of lipstick at the corner of her mouth, messy in a way that didn't match the careful way she had applied it before we left the house. The kind of mess that happens when someone else's mouth is too close to yours. I wiped it away with my thumb before she could react, forcing her to look up at me. "You missed the spot," I said quietly. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Just long enough for the truth to shine through. She knew I had seen everything and quietly left the party. She thought I was broken, but had no idea I was already crafting my military-style revenge. I didn't go after her when she slipped into the night like a thief who thought she'd gotten away clean. I stayed exactly where I was, behind the curtains, surrounded by the noise of people clinking glasses and pretending their lives were perfect. I watched her retreat into the parking lot, watched her glance around like someone afraid of being caught even though she thought the danger had already passed. There was no hesitation. She didn't call me. She didn't wait. She texted someone instead. Quick movements of her fingers lit up by the glow of her screen. I couldn't see the message, but I could see the relief in her posture after she hit send. The way her shoulders dropped, the small, victorious smile curling at the edge of her mouth. I moved fast, slipped out the back gate and around to my car, keeping distance between us. She didn't notice. She was too busy checking her reflection in the side mirror of someone else's SUV, fixing her hair, smoothing her dress, tilting her chin up like she was about to step onto a stage. A few minutes later, a black sedan pulled up, windows tinted too dark to be legal, engine humming low and careful. She walked straight to it. No hesitation, no second glance at the building where her husband was still supposed to be inside, laughing with friends. She opened the passenger door and got in like it was the most natural thing in the world. And me? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. Then another. Then one more for good measure. Evidence. Clean. Cold. Unarguable. The car drove off. I stood there a moment longer, feeling nothing and everything all at once. Then I followed. Not close enough to be obvious, just enough to keep them in sight. They weren't clever. They didn't even try to hide. 5 miles down the highway, they pulled into a cheap motel lit by flickering neon lights, the kind of place you rent by the hour if you don't want anyone asking questions. I parked 2 lots over, killed my engine, and sat there in the dark. Watching. Waiting. Learning. She didn't even look around before slipping into his arms under the awning, laughing into his chest like some lovesick teenager sneaking out after curfew. They kissed. Long, slow. Deep. The kind of kiss that isn't about lust, not just about the physical. The kind of kiss you give someone you've been planning a future with. She looked happy. Happier than I'd seen her in months. That was the first real crack inside me. Not the betrayal. Not the lying. The fact that she wasn't just cheating. She was thriving. When they disappeared into room 114, I didn't follow. I didn't need to see any more. I had seen enough to end this with precision. I drove home slowly, every mile giving me more clarity, more sharpness. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I wasn't the same man who had left for that dinner party 2 hours earlier. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even angry. I was something colder. Something cleaner. Inside our house, the wedding photos stared down at me from the walls, mocking, meaningless. I packed a bag. Not with clothes. With tools. The tools I would need for the kind of revenge that left no blood, no bruises, but would cut deeper than anything physical ever could. Nora had made one fatal mistake. She thought she was smarter than me. She thought she could play both sides, keep her new toy boy and her polished husband balancing the lies like plates on sticks. She didn't know I had already started pulling the ground out from under her. And when she came home, pretending nothing had happened, I would be waiting. Not with shouting. Not with tears. But with a smile sharper than any blade she could imagine. I checked my watch. She had about 2 hours before her world burned. And this time, she would feel every single second of it. The door creaked open at exactly 2:13 a.m. No stealth. No guilt on her face. Just the casual air of someone returning from a harmless night out. I stayed seated in the armchair facing the hallway, arms resting on the sides like a judge waiting for a verdict he already knew. Nora didn't see me at first. She dropped her purse onto the console table, kicked off her shoes without even looking around. Her keys clattered into the bowl like gunshots in the dead silence of the house. She stretched, humming under her breath, a light, stupid little tune. Then she turned and froze. Our eyes locked. I didn't move, didn't blink, just let her feel it. The weight of being caught without any way to wiggle free. "Oh," she said after a moment, the first crack spidering across her fake composure. "You're still up. Still up." As if I hadn't watched her slip out of my life one stolen touch at a time tonight. As if I hadn't followed her to that motel like some ghost she thought she'd buried. "Had trouble sleeping?" I said, voice flat, calm, perfectly even. She nodded too quickly, clutching the strap of her purse like it might save her. "Yeah, me too," she said, stepping further into the house, giving herself too much space to think, to invent. "There was so much traffic, you forgot your phone," I interrupted softly, lifting it from the coffee table where I'd placed it just moments before she arrived. Her face went pale for half a heartbeat. Then she smiled. Bright. Fake. Desperate. "Thanks," she said, reaching out. I didn't give it to her. Instead, I tapped the screen. The photo opened clear as crystal. Her, leaning into another man's chest. His hand around her waist. His lips crushed against hers outside room 114. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might actually faint. But she didn't. She was too stubborn for that. Too proud. Instead, she laughed. A sharp, brittle sound that cracked the air between us. "That's not what it looks like," she said. A phrase so insulting it almost made me admire her nerve. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Tell me, Nora, what does it look like?" She started pacing, a wild animal caught in a shrinking cage. It's complicated," she stammered. "You've been distant lately, and I felt alone. And so you threw yourself into the arms of someone you barely know?" I asked, voice still calm, almost gentle, each word slicing deeper than if I'd raised my voice. "You didn't even have the decency to pick someone discreet. You just picked the first man dumb enough to wink at you across a dinner table." Her mouth opened and closed uselessly. She turned away, hands running through her hair in frantic frustration. "You're twisting everything," she snapped, spinning back toward me. "It's not like that. It's your fault too, you know. You made me feel invisible." Ah, there it was. The final coward's move, blame the man she betrayed for daring to trust her. I stood up slowly. Not aggressive. Not loud. Just enough to make her step back instinctively. "No, Nora," I said. "You chose this. You made the first move. You crossed the line. You didn't trip and fall into his mouth." For a long minute, neither of us moved. The house felt too small, too heavy with all the words we hadn't said for years. Finally, she crossed her arms over her chest, retreating into herself. "What do you want from me?" She spat. "An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. Happy now?" I smiled. A slow, cold smile that must have looked alien on my face because she actually shivered. "I don't want your apology," I said. "I want your resignation." Her brows furrowed, confusion flashing across her face. I tossed a slim manila envelope onto the coffee table between us. It landed with a soft, final thud. Inside were the divorce papers prepared a month ago when I first suspected something wasn't right, long before I had proof, long before tonight. She stared at it like it might bite her. "You've got until morning," I said. "Sign it, or I take every photo, every message, every dirty little secret you've buried, and I walk straight into your office and show it all to your boss, your coworkers, and your parents." Her mouth dropped open, stunned into silence. "I already have it all backed up," I said. "And I don't bluff." For the first time all night, real fear flickered across her face. Not regret. Not guilt. Fear. The kind you feel when you realize you've just played chess with someone who was 10 moves ahead the entire time. I turned my back on her, walking slowly toward the staircase without waiting for her to answer. Each step felt like shedding a layer of skin I didn't need anymore. Behind me, Nora stood frozen, staring at the papers, trapped in a reality she had built with her own hands and now couldn't escape. Tomorrow would be the end. But tonight was mine. And she knew it. The house was silent except for the faint buzz of the heating system kicking in, but even that small noise felt like an intrusion. Nora stayed downstairs. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see her crumbling. I could feel it from every creak in the floor, every strangled breath she tried to suppress. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, and waited. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was cheap. This was colder, deeper. Something close to pity but not quite. An hour passed. Maybe 2. Finally, the sound of hesitant footsteps came up the stairs. She stood in the doorway, small and broken in a way I had never seen before, clutching the unsigned divorce papers against her chest like a child hiding stolen candy. There were no tears on her face. She wasn't crying because she was heartbroken. She was calculating, measuring, searching for an angle. She always had been good at pretending to be the victim. She just didn't realize I wasn't buying anymore. "I didn't sign them," she said after a long pause. I said nothing. "I don't want a divorce," she continued, stepping closer into the dim glow of the bedroom lamp. Her voice was soft now, thick with the kind of fake vulnerability she used when she wanted something. "We can fix this," she whispered. "You and me. We can start over. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. Please." The please sounded rehearsed. Too clean. Too perfect. Almost impressive, really, the way she could try to rewrite the night with just a few tears and trembling hands. "You weren't thinking straight for months," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It sliced her open all the same. Her face crumpled, not out of sadness, but frustration. The realization that her old tricks weren't working anymore. "You're just going to throw us away?" She snapped, the mask slipping, the anger rushing back in to fill the cracks. Over one mistake? I stood up slowly, towering over her without even trying. You didn't just trip and fall into another man's bed, Nora, I said. You built a life outside of us. You fed it. You nurtured it. You chose it every single day. You lied to my face. She shook her head, mouth opening and closing, but nothing came out. Because there were no words big enough to cover what she'd done. No story clever enough to rewrite the images burned into my mind. Do you even know his last name? I asked suddenly, tilting my head, genuinely curious. The question stunned her. The silence that followed was answer enough. I laughed then, not a bitter laugh, not a broken laugh, but a real one. The kind that comes when you realize just how little the person you loved actually cared about the reality you lived in. You don't even know him, I said. You threw away a marriage for a stranger with a rented car and a motel key. Her eyes glittered with unshed tears, but they weren't from regret. They were from losing. I'm not signing anything tonight, she said stubbornly, clutching the papers tighter, her chin lifting like she still had any power left. I need time to think. I shrugged. Think fast, I said. You've got until noon tomorrow. After that, this becomes public. Her mouth dropped open in horror, but I was already moving past her, heading for the guest room. I wasn't going to spend another night breathing the same air as her. Not even out of habit. I heard her call after me, voice shaking with desperation she couldn't hide anymore. Please don't do this. Please. We can fix it. I swear. I'll do anything. I paused at the door, turning just enough for her to see the cold certainty in my face. You already did, I said. You just don't like the consequences. Then I shut the door behind me. And for the first time in what felt like years, I slept like a man who didn't owe anyone a single thing anymore. Tomorrow she would wake up to a world where her lies couldn't save her anymore. And I would wake up free. The morning didn't come gently. It slammed through the windows with a pale, angry light, like even the sun was disgusted by what was left standing in this house. I woke up before dawn, before any alarms could save her. I sat at the kitchen counter, black coffee untouched in front of me, watching the clock tick toward the deadline I'd given her. 7 a.m. The floor creaked above me, Nora's first movements, slow and unsure, like she was dragging herself through some dream she hadn't finished lying about yet. I didn't move. Didn't call out. I wanted her to feel every step down those stairs, every second closer to the moment she couldn't undo. She appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing an old sweatshirt of mine, one she hadn't worn in months. An obvious, desperate costume. She thought pulling on old memories could soften me. Pathetic. Morning, she said softly, voice too sweet, too careful. Like talking to a bomb she didn't know how to defuse. I didn't answer. Just tapped the papers on the counter once with my fingertip, calm, casual, final. They lay there like a loaded weapon she had to pick up. She crossed the room, barefoot, silent. Picked up the papers like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Flipped through them with trembling hands, her eyes darting over the cold language of endings she couldn't negotiate anymore. I need more time, she whispered, not meeting my eyes. You had months, I said. You spent them playing house with someone else. She flinched. Good. She deserved to feel every word like a slap. I made a mistake, she said again, voice higher now, teetering on hysteria. We can go to counseling. Please, we can work through this. It doesn't have to end like this, it already did, I cut her off. The second you chose to be someone else's secret. Tears welled up, real or fake, it didn't matter anymore. She was a theater with the lights turned off. No one was clapping anymore. You're throwing away everything we built, she choked out, voice cracking. No, I said. You threw it away when you kissed him outside room 114. You just didn't think I'd catch you holding the match. She sank onto the stool across from me, head in her hands, sobbing the ugly, broken sobs of someone who finally realizes they're trapped in the mess they made. I sipped my coffee, letting her drown in it. Letting her feel the silence between us like a noose tightening around her neck. After several long, heavy minutes, she straightened, wiping her face roughly. And just like that, the tears stopped. The mask slid back into place. Fine, she said, voice flat, dead. You want a divorce? You'll get it. But don't think for a second you're walking away clean. I'll tell everyone you cheated first. That you were cold. Abusive even. I'll take half of everything. There it was. The real Nora. Not the crying wife, not the remorseful partner, the spoiled, selfish little girl who thought she could still win by threatening to burn the whole house down if she couldn't keep it. I smiled. Slow. Dangerous. You can try, I said quietly. But before you do, maybe you should check your email. Confusion flickered across her face. She grabbed her phone off the counter and opened her inbox. I watched her face drain of blood all over again. Photo attachments. Location data. Screenshots of her private messages, lovingly compiled and timestamped. All of it sent to her parents, her boss, her closest friends, sitting in drafts, just waiting for me to hit send if she even breathed the wrong way. Her hands shook so violently she almost dropped the phone. "You bastard," she hissed. "Wrong again," I said. "You betrayed me. I just stopped pretending you didn't." For the first time since the night before, she looked genuinely trapped. Not angry, not performative, just trapped. The realization finally clawing its way into her brain that there was no way out this time. I slid a pen across the counter toward her. "Sign," I said simply, "or watch everything you've built crumble faster than you can blink." For a moment, she just stared at the pen like it was a weapon aimed straight at her throat. And then, slowly, bitterly, she picked it up and signed. Every line, every page, with shaking hands and a look in her eyes that told me she finally understood just how deeply she had lost. When she finished, she shoved the papers back toward me with a sharp, ugly little movement. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just stood up, gathered the papers calmly, and said, "Leave the keys on the table when you go. You've got until the end of the day." She opened her mouth to argue. Thought better of it. Closed it again. I walked past her without another glance, heading upstairs to start a day that no longer had her name carved into it. Behind me, the kitchen stayed heavy with the weight of a woman who had gambled everything and lost spectacularly. I didn't hear her leave. I stayed upstairs, packing what little I needed, stripping pieces of her existence out of my life like pulling teeth from a corpse. Photos came off the walls. Her sweaters were dragged from my closet and thrown into black garbage bags. Every tiny trace of her, every lie she ever wore like perfume, was methodically erased from my space. By the time I came back down, the house was hollow. Except for her. Nora sat on the couch like a broken doll, still clutching her phone, probably scrolling through old messages, old photos, old lies, looking for something to hold on to. But there was nothing left. Not here. Not anymore. She looked up as I entered, hope flaring across her face like a match about to burn out. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said, small and pitiful. "I never planned for this." I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her squirm under the weight of a future she had built with her own two hands and thought she could outrun. "Not my problem," I said. "You built another life. Go live in it." Tears welled up again. Real ones this time, messy and ugly. Not because she missed me. Not because she regretted what she did. But because consequences had finally arrived, and she wasn't ready. "You're really just gonna throw me out like garbage?" she said, her voice cracking. "You're better than this." I let the words hang in the air for a moment, savoring the bitterness on her tongue. "No," I said slowly. "I'm exactly what you made me." She stood up suddenly, fists clenched, fire flashing behind her wet eyes. "You're a monster," she snapped. "You're heartless." I smiled. "A real one, small and clean." "No," I said. "You just finally met a version of me that doesn't kneel for you." The sound of the clock ticking filled the room between us. She stared at me, breathing hard, her entire body vibrating with the rage of someone who had lost not just the game, but the pieces, the board, the whole damn room. "You'll regret this," she said finally, her voice low and venomous. "You'll wake up one day and realize you threw away the best thing you ever had." I tilted my head, studying her like a stranger I didn't recognize anymore. "Maybe," I said, "but at least I won't wake up next to a liar." That one landed hard. She stumbled back a step, as if the words physically hit her. Without another glance, I grabbed the black bags and headed for the door. Behind me, she stood there, shaking, silent, too hollowed out to throw any more of her cheap, empty words at me. At the door, I paused. Not because of regret, not because of nostalgia, but because every ending deserves a moment of silence. I set the bags down outside, came back in, pulled my phone from my pocket, and hit send on the draft emails I had waiting. I didn't need to check to know they went through. In one digital heartbeat, the mask she had worn for years cracked across 3 different worlds: her family, her friends, her precious professional circle. There would be no rumors, no half-truths, only facts, cold and clinical and undeniable. I turned and faced her one last time. She stood there, frozen, watching the small light on her phone blink. A message received, a bomb detonated. "Goodbye, Nora," I said. And then I walked out. No shouts, no drama, no begging. Just the clean break of a rope snapping after too much strain, and the sound of her whole world collapsing behind me. Freedom didn't feel like a roar. Felt quiet, heavy, strange at first, like walking out of a burning house and realizing you could still smell the smoke in your clothes. I didn't go home. Not really. I drove to a hotel across town. Clean, anonymous, just expensive enough that no questions were asked. Checked in under a fake name I'd used once when booking tickets for a surprise trip we never took because she was always too busy. Poetic, in a way. The room was basic: white sheets, stale air, a view of the highway. But to me, it felt like stepping into air that hadn't been poisoned yet. No memories trapped in the walls. No whispers of betrayal leaking from the furniture. I collapsed onto the bed without even undressing, eyes wide open, feeling the strange, awful piece of finality wrapping itself around me. Not comfort, not yet, but the knowledge that nothing was tying me to that sinking wreck anymore. Sometime around noon, my phone started buzzing. It buzzed so much it almost fell off the nightstand. Calls, messages, emails. I let it pile up. Let the storm rage without me. Eventually, curiosity peeled me off the bed. The first voicemail was from her mother, a woman who had once called me the best thing that ever happened to Nora. Now her voice was sharp, cold, demanding explanations she already knew but refused to believe. The next few were worse. Her boss, calm but furious, the tone of a man who smelled a lawsuit coming from a mile away. Old friends, confused, hurt, asking why I would expose her like that. As if betrayal was something polite people whispered about in back rooms instead of dragging into the sunlight where it belonged. I played them once, deleted them all. Nora herself tried too. Messages getting uglier by the hour. First sweet and pleading, then frantic and accusing, then threatening, desperate little bombs she threw, hoping to make me flinch. "You ruined me," one text read. "I hope you're happy. Everyone thinks I'm disgusting now. My parents won't even take my calls." Another, "I loved you, you coward. I only messed up because I felt alone. You pushed me into his arms." And then the one that almost made me laugh: "If you think this is over, you're wrong. They'll find a way back into your life. You can't just erase me." Erase you? You did that yourself. I just held up the mirror. I blocked her after that. No ceremony, no anger. Just a clean, simple swipe of my thumb. Gone. It wasn't just Nora falling apart, though. The blast zone extended further than I expected. People who used to invite us to brunches and weddings stopped calling. Some took sides. Some didn't know what side to stand on. Some just didn't want to be near the fallout. Good. Better to lose dead weight now than carry it into whatever life came next. By sunset, it was like I had been scrubbed out of my old life with steel wool. No wife. No fake friends. No illusions. Only me. And the open road ahead. I stood by the window, looking out at the highway, feeling a small, unfamiliar thing twitch in my chest. Not sadness. Not relief. Hope. Raw, shaky, dangerous hope. I didn't know where I was going yet. Didn't know what came next. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't walking towards something already poisoned. I was starting clean. And no one was going to stain it again. 3 days later, just when I thought the ground had stopped shaking under my feet, Nora played her last, pathetic card. It came in the form of a knock. Not on my hotel door, she wasn't that reckless yet. On the door of my brother's house. Ryan called me, his voice tight with the kind of fury that usually took a lot to drag out of him. "She's here," he said, teeth grinding through the phone. "She's standing on my porch with tears and a suitcase. Says she needs to talk to you. Says she has nowhere else to go." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the absurdity of it wash over me. Of course she'd try to crawl back through family, through pity, through anything that might still have a heartbeat and a memory of the girl she used to pretend to be. "Tell her to leave," I said calmly. "And if she doesn't, call the cops." There was a pause. Ryan wasn't used to hearing that kind of steel in my voice. He had seen me defend her for years, excuse her coldness, swallow her lies because it was easier than fighting what I wasn't ready to admit. Now there was nothing left to defend, nothing left to excuse. "Got it," he said, and he hung up. I didn't go to his house. I didn't call her. I didn't even check the doorbell cam footage he sent me later, showing her standing there in the rain, looking small, looking lost, clutching a suitcase like a child abandoned at a train station. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. She had made herself a stranger with every secret touch, every whispered lie, every smile she gifted to someone else while I sat alone at a dinner table wondering why the food tasted like ashes. A part of me, the old broken part, almost twitched, almost wondered if I should at least meet her, hear her out, offer her a final closure. But closure is a gift, and she didn't deserve any more gifts from me. She stayed on Ryan's porch for 20 minutes, knocking, crying, begging, and then, when the reality finally sank its teeth into her, she left, dragged her suitcase down the street in the rain like some tragic character in a movie she was directing in her head. No audience, no applause, just the cold, brutal ending she had written for herself. After that, the silence started to settle for Rayal. No more calls, no more texts, no more desperate games. The space she had once filled with noise and demands and manipulations now stretched out wide and clean in front of me. I spent the next few days detoxing from her like poison seeping out of a wound. Went to the gym, ran until my lungs felt like they would burst. Deleted old photos one by one, not out of anger but out of boredom. They didn't even sting anymore. Cleaned out every account we had together. Locked down everything that had my name on it. Piece by piece, I dismantled the last bridges she could ever use to crawl back into my life. By the end of the week, there wasn't a single part of my existence she could touch anymore. Not legally, not emotionally, not at all. It wasn't just about surviving her betrayal anymore. It was about outgrowing it. About building something bigger than her shadow could ever reach. And I was already miles ahead. Freedom wasn't a moment. It was a slow, grinding climb out of the wreckage. I didn't wake up one day feeling new. It happened quietly, almost invisibly, one decision at a time. I found an apartment on the edge of the city. Not fancy, not big, but it was mine. White walls, a single battered leather couch, a bed that didn't feel like a battleground. No photos on the walls. No ghost in the closet. No scent of betrayal trapped between the sheets. The first night there, I slept on the floor with a blanket and a half-finished beer. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like possibility. I rebuilt the basics of my life piece by piece. New gym. New routines. New circles. Nothing that could be touched by her name or her memories. Weeks passed. I thought about her less and less. The hate didn't cling. The sadness didn't rot. What remained was clean, a hard, polished edge inside me, a reminder to never kneel to a false thing again. Then, just when I thought the past had finally stopped scratching at the door, it happened. An email. No subject line. No sender name I recognized. Just a single line in the body of the message. "You think you're safe?" It didn't scare me. Not really. But it confirmed something I had suspected. Nora wasn't done trying to crawl through the cracks. I closed the email. Didn't reply. Didn't give her the oxygen she was begging for. Instead, I documented it. Flagged it. Forwarded it to my attorney, the one already handling the divorce finalizations. I wasn't playing her games anymore. I was building walls she couldn't even reach with a ladder. A few days later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance. Not a friend, just a leftover connection I hadn't severed yet. That Nora was spiraling. Not just the tearful, dramatic spiraling she had weaponized before. Real spiraling. Fired from her job. Parents stopped taking her calls. The man she had gambled everything for had disappeared. Ghosted her completely after realizing she wasn't the fantasy she pretended to be. She was adrift. Alone. Lost in the wasteland she built with her own two hands. And somehow she thought she could drag me back into it. Tear down what I had rebuilt. Punish me for walking away from the flames, she said. But I wasn't hers to hurt anymore. Not even close. I smiled when I closed the laptop that night. Not a cruel smile. Not a gloating one. A simple, quiet acknowledgement of the truth. Nora was a storm I had already outrun. Now she could rage and tear at the world all she wanted, it wouldn't touch me. I had already stepped into the clear. I didn't hear from her again after that. No more emails. No more desperate games. The storm finally burned itself out without ever touching the ground I stood on. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. No drama. No courtroom scenes. Just signatures exchanged through lawyers like business transactions, cold, neat, finished. The day the papers came through, I didn't throw a party. I didn't get drunk or call friends to celebrate. I simply sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a glass of bourbon in my hand, and watched the city hum beneath me. It was over. For real. Not the kind of over where you lie to yourself because it's easier than tearing out the rot by the roots. The real kind. The kind that leaves no pieces behind. I didn't wish her well. I didn't wish her pain. I didn't wish her anything at all. She didn't exist to me anymore. Not as a memory. Not as a regret. Not even as a warning. Just gone. Like smoke fading into an open sky. A few months later, Ryan told me she had moved 2 states over. Started fresh, or tried to. Changed her hair, changed her name on social media, spun some story about how she had been betrayed and abandoned by people who didn't understand her. Classic. A new audience. New lies. Same girl. But it wasn't my problem. Not anymore. I had no need to chase her shadow across state lines. I had no interest in who she fooled next. My world had grown larger without her. Cleaner. Sharper. Alive in ways I hadn't even realized I had buried while trying to love someone who wore betrayal like perfume. If I learned anything from Nora, it was this: loyalty to the wrong person is self-destruction. Trust given to a liar is ammunition handed to your enemy. And real love does not survive in a house built on excuses and half-truths. It demands more. It deserves more. And now so did I. I looked out over the city one last time that night, the lights stretching endless in every direction, and I smiled. Not for her. Not against her. For myself. Because somewhere out there, beyond the broken promises and false starts, was a life waiting that didn't have her fingerprints on it. And I was already walking toward it, steady, certain, unafraid. Nora was just a chapter. A short one. Ugly. Forgettable. And my story was only getting started.